Great to see all of you, the old and new friends of Lohan Academy's community from several continents. And at this moment, some of you are in the US Eastern Time, so it's kind of early morning. And uh, some people from California would hate me to wake you up. And many of us in China are 9:30 p.m., closer to sleeping time. And the most miserable are people from Australia. And I think most comfortable guys are in Europe. Anyway, so we have a huge panel of the audience from all over the world. And I really hope this is a very fruitful time, worthy of your efforts. And if not, let's make this happen together. Now, so November this year marks the second anniversary of the launch of the ChatGPT. Even among the fighting economists, there's very little doubt that AI is transforming every walk and work of our life, business models, organizations, and together the economy and the society. I think the question is how to what extent and at what pace. So I think the key word is assessment. We would like to assess. It's high time to assess the impact, the penetration of AI into the economy and the business. So to that end, Lohan Academy is organizing a series of frontier dialogue on AI, and this marks the first one. Today we have a very strong panel. All five speakers have very strong academic background, but some of them are frontier practitioners from in the AI industry from China, some of them from the United States, and some others are profound thinkers. And besides that, many in the audience are entrepreneurs, practitioners, AI scientists, and researchers. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to today's dialogue. And in the beginning portion of this, there will be individual presentations, and later we're going to have the discussions. So while you listen, you're more than welcome to add your questions to the chat box so that I'm going to pick them up later. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the first speaker, Professor Alan Yuan. Alan was a tenured professor of computer science and statistics at Purdue University. Later, he was the chief AI scientist of the Ant Group. At that time, was a former colleague of mine, and he was also a co-founder of the so-called IDSD, and later it became the famous Damo Academy in China. Then later he left Alibaba. He's championing several institutions. He's championing some of the leading world-class large language models for climate, AI for science, and for some applications in the industry. So I think he's very fit to talk about, to opening up the talk. And the question we gave him is to assess the development of AI technology and its path to application. So, Alan, the floor is yours.
Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned before, it was my honor to participate in this event. And so I have actually a professor at the Fudan University, and I was a former colleague of Professor Chen in Alibaba and in Ant Group. And then I recently also started a company called Wuxian Guangyan, also English name is Infotech. So really, I will talk about AI from practitioner's perspective, since I was working at Alibaba, building the AI infra for Alibaba and then later for Ant Financial. But then also throwing some more, I'll say, technology perspective. Okay. I think later this year there's the Sam Altman, who is the founder of OpenAI, said AGI is gonna be a massive driver for productivity. It could double the world GDP only in a decade. It was controversial, but at the same time, it was gaining a lot of attention. Okay, people thinking, okay, this might be something important for the growth of economy. But the AGI has been there for a while, and I was invited to attend a future investor initiative in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, Saudi. During the meeting, we're talking about AGI and ASI, artificial superintelligence. The one crucial topic is will scaling law lead us to AGI? So I was saying actually earlier this year, I was saying, yes, LLMs, large language models are super helpful, but they basically compress a lot of data from the internet, all the public available data. And by data summarization, essentially summarize all the information online, all the public accessible data into a enormous enormous number of parameters. Okay, but it only can do fast thinking. Fast thinking meaning it make predictions, it predict next token, they give next sentence, but it lacks the capacity of rigorous multi-step reasoning. Okay, it's called slow thinking. Okay, in the famous book written by Kahneman, right? It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. And by lacking this capacity, really, I think it is simply impossible to reach AGI based on pre-trained LLMs by the scaling law. Scaling law, let me explain what's a scaling law, okay, for the audience who doesn't know scaling law at all. This is fairly simple. It means the more data you have, the larger the model is, the better the performance, the more accurate the prediction is. So that's the idea that's the central argument in scaling law. But you see, the LLMs was our ChatGPT is the starting point for this AGI, right? But there's a very interesting paper released late in the summer of this year, published in June by professor from MIT and all the institutes. The central argument in this paper is that language is a tool for communication, not for thinking process. It's not for thought. They gave a very convincing examples to demonstrate this statement. Basically, there are some patients who cannot speak clearly, but who can conduct thinking, analytical thinking, very accurately. And on the other hand, some people couldn't conduct the thinking process clearly, but they can speak beautifully, right? So they give many examples, but the whole argument is if language is not the vehicle for thinking, then what can we do using LLMs for thinking for anything that relies on thinking, rigorous thinking? Okay. And luckily, I think in September this year, OpenAI released O1 to demonstrate that actually we can do a lot more than LLMs. Essentially, it's putting layman's terminology. It's like AlphaGo. Let me explain O1. What is it? It's fairly simple. You can think that as the AI program for playing Chinese game Go, combined with LLMs, okay, the large language models, put them together, then you have this so-called O1 model from OpenAI. But really, it demonstrates the capacity of slow thinking. So my friend, who is also the leading scientist in OpenAI on this O1 project, Norm Brown, he said, like playing a poker game. If you give the AI 10 seconds to think, it can outperform a model that with say 10,000 times bigger numbers of parameters, 10,000 times bigger, and also does better than a model with 10,000 times of training time. So essentially, it's trading the training time towards the test time. Okay, and that opens the box for a new scaling law. But also that demonstrates its, I'll say, outstanding or surprising capacity in logical reasoning, particularly for coding, for scientific problems in like I show in the figure. One is the competition math. You can say O1 preview outperform GPT-4o by a huge margin. And also in the PhD test, we used to joke ChatGPT is like a student from elementary school, but now you can see it does really well in PhD level scientific questions. Okay, so that says it can do rigorous scientific multi-step reasoning. Okay, and also you can see the scaling law is changed from training time. I show you on the right panel. One is for training time, one is for inference time, test time. The x-axis is log scale. The y-axis is accuracy. You can see it's linear in log scale. Basically means you have more test time, you can do the job much better. Okay, that's the so-called new scaling law. I'll skip this slide. It's really technical. Basically shows you how O1 does its job. Basically, it's a thinking process. At each time point, it will examine multiple possibilities and check how likely it's good, how good is it, and carry on the process again and again, okay, in an iterative manner. However, O1 underperforms, okay, in open-ended, unstructured domains. So that's well observed. It's not surprising because O1 relies on a verifier. It's like solving a geometry problem. It's really hard to find the solution, but once you have it, it's really easy to check. It's a correct node. The proof is a correct node. But for real-world applications, like once open-ended, unstructured, like writing, professional writing, writing a financial report, it's not a single metric. Then it's a lot harder. It's very hard for current O1 technologies. Okay, so that's actually this statement by Sequoia. It's a famous VC firm, yeah, worldwide. Basically said what makes reasoning hard with the current method is it's basically strawberry. It's O1 based. Another name for O1 is strong on domains, very similar to logic like coding, math, but not good at open-ended, unstructured problems. What we have been working on essentially is to address reasoning problems in open domain, like writing, like investment, like compliance. There's so many possibilities. How do you do it? So essentially, we're thinking, okay, there's new possibilities to combine logical inference with neural nets. It's like a symbolism with a connectionism. Put them together, okay? That's like two schools of AI, put them together. Once you do that, this is like integration of type 1, type 2 for trustworthy AI. Okay, this is a technical architecture. Basically, there's a logical engine, there's a neural net engine. In one engine, you put them together, you load together, and you give out a controllable, explainable result for trustworthy outputs. And we released a tech report in July this year, and also we compared our results in 世界人工智能大会 in Shanghai. It's called a WAC conference. Just save the trouble for translator. In that we announced the model, but we compare that with GPT-4 Turbo and GPT-4o. You can see for the 4 benchmark logic inference benchmark data sets, we all outperform GPT-4. Essentially, that's the beautiful strength once you combine logical inference with neural nets. Okay, you can cross the board. By a large margin, it does a much better job than GPT-4. And then we set up a logical reasoning track for AI for science task competition in Shanghai. We say, okay, why do we open up this competition in July? And there are lots of new ideas coming up. Okay. So that's mainly are talking about the newest development in AI. So basically switching from pre-trained large language models to test time inference, the test time scaling law. Basically, it's like a reinforcement learning, like the technology used for AlphaGo, for playing Go, AI Go players, okay? But not talking about the applications, how it's gonna be used in practice. Simply put, AI is becoming a service. It's translating many things. It's not just a tool, it's a new service platform, okay? It's a tool for raising productivity, okay? SaaS was the traditional, it's a classical way of using software. It's called SaaS, software as a service. It reduces cost, but it takes time, okay, to build a good SaaS software. But the AI is changing the game dramatically, okay? It reduces the cost. It has a strong generalization capacity. You don't have to customize your module in your SaaS software for clients, because AI nowadays can generalize much easier than previous SaaS software. And also there's strong, for SaaS, for example, for the adoption of SaaS in China, has been really challenging, really difficult, because of bottom up innovation. But with AI, it's across the board, across actual nations. So all embracing AI. I think this wave of technology, new technology, probably gonna have a much faster pace compared to SaaS in both actually in China and also in US. So actually talking about the SaaS, I want to also look further back in history, like internet wave. So in the past, for the internet .com wave, first you have the infrastructure development. That's like a representative company is Cisco. Like back in 1990s, Cisco is, or in early 2000s, Cisco is doing really well. But later, Google, Facebook came up. So those companies are application companies. It's like building the basic infrastructures, then the applications. So like building the roads, then cars. It's the same story. But then the application will drive the better infrastructures, coordinate all the GPUs in an enterprise. We need more training platforms, inference platforms, even platforms for building agents. Because once your agents, really you have all the applications that is beyond the LM. So you can really finish a task like buying an air ticket for me tomorrow, or writing a financial report for me. Then look at the different industries. I think probably every industry will be not restructured, at least have a huge impact by AI. So this is a report from Goldman Sachs, and it released last year and this year of also expect for the next 6 months what areas will be influenced by AI. So basically, adoption rate of AI. It's not surprising. Information, professional writing, science, scientific, technical, education, finance, retail, but that's exactly what we've been working on. Essentially, focus on infra, AI native applications for professionals, AI for science, for scientific research, and the trustworthy AI for financial applications, for health applications. I show you a few applications in practice. So this is a application we did for a financial firm, securities firm. Basically, it's professional writing for financial analysts based on the trustworthy AI. Once you have financial reports, where you look into all the financial company financial report, analyze the data, and also the unstructured data from internet, combine them together, generate an in-depth analysis. And I show you what's under the hood. It actually requires a multi-step reasoning. So in this one, we show it like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps inference. That is beyond, say, LLMs. It really requires a rigorous thinking process. It's like research flows, logic flows, and how do you put them together. And that will be super useful for many industries, for mission critical applications. And that's another application. So revenue prediction. We use a neurosymbolic inference. Actually, we implement the thinking process Mongo, the previous partner of Warren Buffett. Essentially, you examine multiple factors like market, size of market, competitive landscape, the upstream, downstream logistics, and so on. Then put them together to have the final outcome. It's a long thinking process. Once you have it, you have really you can generate the report, the summary, okay? But that's only for the digital world. What about the physical world? So Sora this year from OpenAI talking about the video generation. That looks like real video, but it's generated by AI. But we can go beyond that. We can look into signals from which is unperceived by human beings, like sensory data from satellites, from a microscope, from all the sensors, right? Scientific sensors. So we build a weather forecast model, for example. That's what we show here. You can see the very accurate prediction. It overlays the green curves are prediction. The black curve is what's happened. A typhoon. That's a basic map actually near the Southeast Asia Sea. And there's a yellow curve that's from European Weather Forecast Center. That's viewed as the best weather forecast center for mid-range weather forecast. So essentially, we use a similar technology for LMs, but with a new technology changes essentially because we're not predicting next word, next token, but we're predicting whether 7 days later or 30 days later or even 45 days later. So you couldn't use exactly the LLMs used for ChatGPT. We changed that actually with our design. We can do a very good job for weather forecast, not only for say 15 days for weather forecast, but also for say sub-seasonal prediction. So that meant to be 30 days to 45 days in advance. But also we're doing that for super resolution, like 1 kilometer, 1 hour, okay, in China. And the right panel is a result from actually from a copy from the website of European Mid-Range Weather Forecast Center. The x-axis is the days, how many days in advance the prediction is. The y-axis is accuracy. And on the beginning, see all the methods similar, but once you further in the time, all the methods decay. The performance, all the methods decay, but our method is the best. Outperform, say, GraphCast, the method from DeepMind, from Google, and also from other competitors, okay? We also build a model not only for the large scale, like weather system, but even for climate system, but also we do it for microscopic level. That is for microRNA, for actually siRNA, that stands for small interference RNA. This type of RNA can suppress the expression of genes that cause a disease, right? So this is a new modality for drug design. So this project, the estimated the market is 12 billion for this year, and will increase to 39 billion in 5 years. So what we did is essentially first using multimodality foundation models to parse all the patterns legally and generate a database for siRNA. Then we build the AI we call Yuan foundation model. That gives the predicting error near down to 8% from all the way to 40%. And then that gives us a high promise for real world application in the new drug design, for siRNA drug design. And there's another one. That's for weather. That's a siRNA. That's a large molecule. But we can look at even smaller scale. Let's look at the molecular scale. Essentially, I think the first equation is the Schrodinger equation. That's the equation for the universe at the microscopic level. But then we build a pre-trained foundation model for that. Instead of to predict its entropy, the energy gap, and so on. Then that's instead of using traditional molecular dynamics, using the large scale simulation on HPC, we can do it much faster and efficiently, accurately. And they could address problems that couldn't be solved by traditional, say, molecular dynamics or DFT. That has a lot of applications, like for battery design, for 酶的设计, catalytic optimization. Basically, how do you optimize a catalyst design, and also, of course, for carbon caption, okay, for basically CO2 caption as well. So basically, new materials. So that I just show you a bunch of applications, essentially from finance to weather forecast to drug design to material design. But essentially, what we really want to do is basically tie technology is a driving force for economy. Actually, as quote Brian Arthur's quote, the economy is the expression of technology, in the book Nature of Technology, which I read with a huge pleasure and a very inspiring book. But at the same time, AI also brings risk, right? So AI can do so much, then all the countries, all the nations are, I say, the international competition, and also between nations and also industries. It will, on one hand, I'll say, drive the fast growth of AI, but at the same time, I think humankind face existential, economic, and societal risk, right? In the long run, it's that I don't know how long it is, but we need to be cautious. So what I'm thinking is we couldn't and we shouldn't stop the development of AI, but we need explainable, controllable AI. We need more embrace. We get more. We need to embrace open source. We need international collaborations, communications, and that's essential. It's important. Otherwise, it's like a prisoner dilemma. It's like, I want to be better and stronger. Then it's dangerous. And also, the last point, I put a question mark because I don't know how it will unfold in the future. Basically, it's a blockchain with AI. The purpose of blockchain to me is really decentralized trust system, but AI is centralized, all the data putting together. But you see, you put all the eggs in one spot is dangerous. One basket is dangerous. So can we decentralize? But then that is also, I will slow down the technology development of AI at the same time, because that will require more engineering effort and slower and harder. But at the same time, maybe there's some additional benefit. How do we measure that together? So I would say decentralized or not. Okay, so that's my sharing, and thank you. And I will look forward for the panel discussion later.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. So, Alan covered many points within short period of time, but let me repeat just a few. I think firstly he talked about that thinking involves fast thinking and slow thinking, and the future or the challenge is really as to how to solve the slow thinking or complicated thinking problems. That's his first point. And I think a second point I can remember is that AI is really changing the capacity of SaaS, the software. So that he believes will make the penetration of this round of the SaaS much faster than the traditional SaaS, and that will improve the productivity. Now, the third point I can remember is that this time actually the transformation of the infrastructure and application happens at the same time. So many companies actually are doing them simultaneously. I think this is very different from the electricity revolution, and I'm actually writing an article on that, so I really concur with that. The fourth point I can remember um, is that so he talked about that there's a lot of the uh, applications. He's talked about the many information intensive industries in financial industries, weather forecast, meteorological foundational models, and then molecular for science. And anyway, it can do well in so many areas. One last
Yeah.
question, maybe we can ask later for Alan to answer is how can you do well in many areas? What's the key to excel to beat the many traditional applications? Now, he talked about the risk for human beings. Um, we need this to be more transparent, controllable, explainable. And anyway, he worried about the applications. Now, but so that I think is really a good time to introduce our second speaker. He talk about
But
the
may I add one more point? The
sure,
summary, just one more. One is also O1 is the O1 from OpenAI is good at closed form problems, but
correct.
for open world it's difficult. We need new technologies. I give one possible approach we've been developing. Second is the O1 the impact is big. You probably will change the hardware landscape as well. That's talking about inference cloud because currently all the GPUs are designed for training. That's like a
Mm,
trillion dollar company, right? The NVIDIA and all the GPU companies are, super hot. But with the inference part, the software will change the architecture or have a huge impact on the hardware part as well. So I want to just stress this additional 2 points. The subtle is important. Yeah.
yeah, so basically you're talking about that the slow thinking part is more complex thinking, especially with the questions, open-ended questions. That's really the challenge, and that requires a different methodology, including the
More.
different infrastructure to do that. And you think that's the future, right? So
Oh, that also not even for O1 it requires a new hardware infra probably will trigger new waves of
okay,
development, even for
okay,
O1, even for this, yeah.
got it.
I
Okay,
just
so
want to emphasize this
So,
point.
so let me summarize that Alan basically he talked about the potential improvement on the productivity, but he also worried about its impact on human being on work. So that is a good chance for me to introduce our second speaker, Sir Chris Pissarides. Chris is the Nobel Prize winner, and he's really a leading researcher in the labor market, economic growth, and structural change. And so he won his Nobel Prize for his work on markets with frictions, and he has been consistently being a leading authority in labor market research. So I think he has a lot to say. Maybe there's nobody else is better than him to talk about the to assess. A keyword is assess the impact of AI on work. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Right, thank you very much, Long. I was quite amused listening to Alan because I've only just been to, not just, I mean, last month I went to the World Laureates Association meeting in Shanghai, where many scientists talked about AI. It's the first time I think that I hear so many scientists trying to predict the future with AI. What will happen in the future? I thought scientists were supposed to analyze the present and understand what's going on, not not tell us what's coming in the future. But it's astonishing though how many scientists involved in AI sounded exactly like Alan in that meeting. I think I think you should take your lesson from economists. Whenever economists try to predict the future, they make a complete mess. Even one of the greatest of all time, John Maynard Keynes, made a complete mess about predicting the future and what will happen to technology, to jobs. So I'm not going to predict the future. I'm going to tell you what's going on now and what we can say about what's going on with AI in labor markets now, and it's based on hard data that we got from Britain, admittedly, which is where I live and where we can access some big data sets. And the questions I'm going to ask are how are workers in industrial countries and especially
Chris.
Yes.
Hi, Chris. Can you enlarge your PPT?
Yeah, I will actually when I would want you to read.
Okay, sorry.
Not yet. What I'm going to do is that a little bit unusual, not like other talks I've seen, which is that I will first give you a fairly long introduction with about half the speech, and then I have some tables to show you in this here. I mean, I can enlarge it now and keep it there. Actually, it makes no difference. Here, what you see here are the questions that I'm going to ask, but I don't have slides in the beginning because mainly to move fast through time, because I wanted to make some points in the 20 minutes that I was allocated. Okay, so my questions are: how are workers in industrial countries affected by AI so far? And what's their impact on productivity and growth? I was quite astonished that Sam Altman, who I doubt whether he knows very much about productivity, said in 10 years' time it would double. I bet you anything it will not. I'm prepared to put up any stake that he would like. And finally, what I say, can we improve the current situation? And if so, how can we do it? Okay, well, let me first talk a little bit about productivity. I mean, like many other working on labor market issues, employment, and all that, we consider improvements in productivity to be an extremely important objective, and we should pursue it because it improves our living standards, and it helps governments achieve their social objectives like good health and education systems, good social support to vulnerable groups. But I also think we should be paying as much attention to the well-being of workers and to life satisfaction from the economy. I mean, just ask this simple question. To get higher productivity, we need to work. We need to work with capital, with learning new technologies. And if work makes us unhappy, if it gives us depressions, mental illness, then what's the point? Is that the price worth paying? So at the very least, we should be concerned about both. Now, let me then ask, what is well-being when I say well-being? And you see the word well-being mentioned more and more in English language texts. In fact, it's almost a steep curve. If you look at Google, how many times is the word well-being being searched and is in documents that people download. Now, well-being is at work, let's be a bit more specific, is simply the way that the worker feels about work. Are they happy doing whatever activity they're doing at work? Are they stressed? Are they relaxed? Sometimes people use objective measures like medically diagnosed stress, mental illness, or absenteeism from work to show whether workers are happy with what they're doing. But I think subjective measures, such as responses to questionnaires, are more encompassing. And empirical studies are using them, and they're showing that you can get good results. You cannot list every possible thing that might make people happy or unhappy. Just ask them if they're happy or unhappy. Now, that's the way I like to think about well-being, subjective responses. Now, changes in technology will necessitate the transition of workers from one set of tasks, one role within their company to another. They might also necessitate a job change, the closure of companies, the formation of new startups. But what we've learned in the labor market is that role turnover is more common than job turnover, despite all the attention that economists have paid in understanding how many jobs the new technology will eliminate. I think that's a wrong focus. Now, whatever the type of transition, though, that workers will have to go through, it's taking place all the time in labor markets. This goes back to the work of Davis and Haltiwanger, like how much turnover there is in labor markets, how many different things workers have to do all the time. So why are we so concerned now about the technology, and we weren't so concerned before? I think here actually maybe there is some justification in the sense that the disruption that we're experiencing now is much bigger. We don't understand very well what's going on. And therefore, we need to learn a lot more things. Workers need to learn a lot more things to be able to manage the current transitions. Now, companies can do certain things to achieve these transitions, to achieve more smooth transitions and adapt to the new technologies without making life for their workers completely miserable. Making sure that the workers enjoy a good working environment is important. Providing good training possibilities to learn these new technologies, ensure that the transitions are smooth and benefit the company as much as their workers. Now, as you know, many people, beginning with the World Economic Forum, I think, are calling the current situation, the current industrial revolution, if you like, the fourth industrial revolution. And currently, there is no doubt that the fourth industrial revolution is driven by artificial intelligence. 20, 30 years ago, it was driven by robotics, but now it's definitely AI. AI can have many more applications than previous automation technologies like robots, because it's capable, according to the Stanford report, for example, of influencing work at all levels, except for the very top managerial level, where complex decisions need to be made. And if we believe the scientists, including the one we just listened to, that's coming too. We don't know precisely how much is being used currently, despite that capability that it has, because it's embodied in software that is not directly observed, unlike robots who are self-propelled independent units. And they can be counted. Now, there is certainly a lot of hype about AI. Workers seem to live in fear of losing their jobs, and about 80% of employers say that they're using it. But so far, the evidence shows that workers are not justified in their fears because they haven't lost their jobs, and employers are using in simple applications like remote working or using cameras to watch remote parts of the office. Sorry, can you put the, can you mute yourself, please, Andrew? Thank you. The general view, however, is that the use of AI, although it's still very limited, it's coming. So we must prepare for it. In my view, more worrying than this is that we don't know in what form it's coming. And we have a lot of choice how to develop it, something that reflects what Alan, in fact, said right at the end of his speech. So far, the news is not always good. In research that we did at the Institute for the Future of Work in London, which I co-chair, we found that in Britain, many applications of AI have reduced the quality of work, at least as perceived by the workers. There are certain things that we know about AI, other than its potential, and these relate mainly to the enablers that countries need to have to take full advantage of it and develop it in socially beneficial ways. To be able to make extensive use of AI, countries need to have a strong digital infrastructure, powerful broadband, which is reliable and universal. Their innovation capabilities need to be strong with well-trained human capital to support them. They need to be open to collaborations and interact effectively with other similar countries, something else that was said a few minutes ago. And they need to have good quality labor force institutions, including good social support, to help workers make the transitions across jobs or roles. On these criteria, the United States and China come out as top performers, partly because of their size and partly because of the emphasis and resources that they have put into developing a good digital research environment. Europe is not as well prepared, but efforts are being made to improve the situation, as suggested by the recent Draghi report on competitiveness that was published only a couple of months ago in September. Compared with the big two, Europe is well prepared in one aspect of the transitions that will be necessary in the technological revolution that is coming, in the provision of social support and training facilities, which we consider very important in Europe, I should say. In terms of well-being or subjective happiness measures, Europe scores higher than other countries, higher than both China and the United States, as far as I know, most likely because of the social support and the lower working hours that it offers. Now, traditional AI, which carries out commands based on data, is finding many applications and it's predictable where it's going. You just feed the computer with data, with commands, and it very quickly carries them out. Generative AI, which makes decisions and has much more capability to analyze data and language, can do many more tasks. Recent developments, which have reduced the computing capacity needed to execute it, are major advances in the application of Gen AI. Large language models such as ChatGPT are ones that are threatening even professional jobs, such as paralegals, civil servants, programmers, and anyone who writes reports. But it's not quite there yet. In a very interesting, what I found a very interesting Lohan Academy lecture delivered only last week, Lindsay Raymond, in collaboration with Eric Brun-Johnson and Daniel Lee, explain how Gen AI is benefiting less skilled workers more than the more highly skilled, which I just said we are threatened, probably because so far Gen AI is still learning from more highly skilled workers. So when it gives them answers to their problems, in fact, it just repeats what they said a few months earlier. So we're not quite there yet. One thing that we can say with some confidence is that with AI, we're unlikely to face a situation of job shortage across the economy. We're finding that they're augmenting work, not taking over jobs from workers. That's why we currently have a labor shortage, a job shortage. We should not be asking where are the jobs going to come from in the world of AI, given current experience, but what skills will I need to work effectively in this world? It's easy to guess the general type of skills that will be in demand in the age of AI. Everyone will need to understand the basics of AI, as when computers were first introduced, when everyone needed to understand the basics of computing, like messaging, file storage, etc. But for deeper specialization, skills will diverge, I think, into two general kinds. On the one hand, there will be the new technology skills for those that will be developing and applying the new technologies. And on the other hand, there will be what you might call the soft skills, which I don't like at all the term, but that's the one that is understood and widely used, for the larger number of workers that will work on the provision of people-to-people services, possibly assisted by the new technologies. Some collaborative projects at the LSE and the Institute for the Future of Work, where I divide my life, we got all online job ads from Britain, about 2.5 million. We cleaned the data down to about 1.5 million per year. Firms advertise jobs with about 3,700 separate skills on the Lightcast or the Burning Glass definition of skill. And we analyzed in detail the skills required in 2016. And again, the skills that companies required in 2022. What we find is what you see here, that the list of the skills that companies want most are what you might call old-fashioned type of skills, good communication ability, good management, good client services. And these are the skills that dominated in both years, in the early year and the later, 6 years in between them. But despite that, although that's what we find the dominant things, there are new skills related to digital technologies emerging, and you can see them coming up. Now, recall that Britain during this period, as I said a minute ago, like most other advanced countries, in fact, I think with the only exception of Italy, if I'm correct, suffered from labor shortages. It's for the first time that since job vacancy records began, advertised job vacancies far exceeded job seekers. So although firms were looking for workers qualified to analyze data and do some technical tasks, most employers were looking for workers who were able to communicate clearly with both colleagues and customers, be confident in dealing with both, and support a good customer base. In other words, workers who were effective in person-to-person interaction. We're seeing that because our economies, Britain, United States, Western Europe, they're service economies. So what businesses really want to succeed is good person-to-person service. IT skills are coming up because they realize that these technologies are going to help them. But what we find is that although the skills that you see here on this table in front of you, they've been they're in demand by something like 80% of job adverts mention them and say it's important that people have these skills. Then 40% of them also say that they would like to have IT skills. And when you look at the new skills that are emerging since 2016, that we find them in 2022, but not in 2016, and also some skills that were present in 2016, but not anymore, they're practically all of them related to IT. You can see it here. In 2016, companies were happy to get people who knew Microsoft Office, who were using HTML5, Microsoft Windows, and so far. Obviously, these no longer appear because everyone is supposed to know them. You learn them at school. What companies want now is, at least in Britain, is to be able to manage Amazon web servers. That's number one, by the way, IT skill, which I had no idea until I saw it there, that the Amazon cloud, and so it was so popular with business over here. But then you also see, another area is very interesting is cybersecurity, because there are so many cyber attacks at companies that practically all large companies now want to have a cybersecurity officer working with AI, as you can see. But despite all that, there is still demand for skills that are related more to the type of persons that they employ and to people's skills, like, client onboarding, for example, comes under IT. But it's really learning about your clients. And there's another that comes, and talent acquisition is under HR. But again, what talent are they looking for? It might be related to IT, but it might also be related to assertiveness and person-to-person communication. So the biggest changes then that we see, both of new skills emerging and old ones disappearing, are in IT, with some sprinkling of kind of skills that are related to the person-to-person communication. Here I put the top 10 skills. I think if you go a little bit further down, then you're going to find health services mainly, and engineering, which applies to science, health services, because we have aging populations, and remember, we just come out of the pandemic at this time, so there was a lot more concern about health. Now, with changing skill needs now, firms need to spend resources on training, as every labor economist will tell you. Government also has a role to play here, subsidizing training, especially for smaller firms that cannot afford to do their own. Changes are also required in secondary education, in my view, as the older methods of teaching are not well suited in the new world of fast changing technologies, but that's an entirely new topic altogether. Now, question here, should one train in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics? Well, the answer to this question might be obvious, but there are some subtleties involved. I would say yes, you have to learn some basic STEM, up to some basic knowledge though, but don't be misled that that's where the future of human work is going to be, because you hear so much about AI. Many STEM-related tasks can be done by AI, and as the use of AI is expanding, fewer STEM trade professionals will be needed. AI is not good at offering person-to-person services in non-technical sectors of the economy, and I doubt whether they will be in the near future. And that's where human labor will always be wanted, especially in our aging societies. AI machines might be good at diagnosing health problems and even performing operations, but their capabilities do not even get close to humans in providing care and support for older people. And at the current fertility rates we have, our societies will be dominated by older people. The challenge for these person-to-person service jobs is how to make them attractive for large numbers of workers, especially new entrants to the labor market. These sectors are predominantly labor-intensive and low productivity growth sectors, so they need to be supported by the rest of the economy. The problem is aggravated by the fact that in countries like Britain and other European countries, the public sector plays a big role as employer. The problem is especially acute in national health services, which are facing increased pressures because of aging populations. So what's going to be the king, if you like, in the near future when it comes to this is what's known as Baumol's cost disease. You know, that you have services that will be demanded more and more. There's no productivity growth, so prices will have to go up. Otherwise, they will not be provided. Now, I have focused on the impact of AI on jobs and the changes that it's bringing to labor markets. What about productivity growth? Are we on the threshold of a major productivity boom, like some Altman that I didn't know about in here, but sorry, I jumped. Yeah. So are we in the threshold of a major productivity boom? Some believe that AI will have the capacity to increase productivity substantially. We've seen an example just now. Personally, I doubt whether it will make much difference to the productivity statistics, although it should improve the quality of services that we get and reduce mistakes. The reason I'm saying that is because of the structure of the economy. The things that will become more productive are not the things that we consume day in, day out in our lives. And this view that I've expressed is very much like the impact that computers and software such as Microsoft Office had in the early days of digitalization. You may have heard Robert Solow's famous quip at the time that you see computers everywhere except in the productivity statistics. I think something similar will be experienced with AI, for as long as we have no way of measuring quality and speed of service provision in our national statistics. We're going to see AI everywhere, in companies, when we read the press and all that, but look at productivity statistics and it won't be there. And the reason is that we don't know how to measure it in productivity statistics. We have not yet found ways of measuring well-being in our GDP statistics, although AI might be contributing substantially to our well-being if we are careful enough. Now, it's clear from the discussion so far that I had that both workers and their employers are facing big challenges. There are a lot of uncertainties about the future and about the best approaches to work. Now I ask, how are workers coping in this world? Surveys of workers' attitudes to work have proliferated recently as part of life happiness surveys. They find that losing your job is one of the life events that gives most unhappiness, along with illness or death in the family and divorce. But being at work is one of the activities that gives most stress and dissatisfaction, especially some things associated with work like commuting or seeing your boss. Only being sick in bed scores consistently below being at work. So there seems to be a contradiction. People hate losing their jobs, but they hate doing their jobs as well. Something is wrong there. Now, we might ask, isn't that what the economists should expect? No one should feel happier working than pursuing leisure activities off work. Otherwise, there would be no reason to pay people. In 101 labor economics is the work-leisure trade-off and what income will balance them out. But there is room for improvement, in my view. When workers are asked about what would make them feel better at work, they mention better communication with managers, more transparency in the company's activities and plans for the future, better social relations at work, more time flexibility, and more autonomy in choosing their role in the organization. More money comes low in the list. There are also variations across workers. For example, professional people feel better at work than non-professionals, and yet they get paid more. Recent automation technologies seem to be making things worse. Studies of connections between the risk of automation, measured, for example, as in Frey Osborne, and subjective well-being, they find negative correlations. Workers in jobs that run a higher risk of automation express less job satisfaction than those in safer jobs. Clearly, worker well-being could be improved without violating what economists call the work-leisure trade-off. In other work that we did at the Institute, based on interviews with workers, we found that some technologies improve well-being at work, others make it worse. For example, The use of laptops, tablets, smartphones, and real-time messaging tools when provided by the employer are associated with an improved quality of life for workers. Workers also feel that they have more flexibility and autonomy. But technologies associated with AI, like surveillance or automation, increase anxieties, partly because of fear of job loss, but also because some good features of traditional types of work, such as enjoying uninterrupted free time away from the office, might be lost. Many employees now get phone calls on Saturday evening or on Sunday from the employers saying, "Oh, I've been working on something. Do you mind if we have a brief conversation?" Well, workers hate that kind of thing, I can tell you. Flexibility in the, and I can show you that actually here. Now, this here is quite revealing. What we ask workers is about, how many actually? 5,000, I think, as many as that. What we ask is, in the last 3 years, has technology changed everyday work experience in any of the following ways? And the blue bars are those who said yes positively, and the red are those who said yes but negatively. So if you start from the top, has it given you more opportunities, giving you opportunities to learn new things? That's the most popular thing of all. More than 50% of the workers, about 60% in fact, said yes, and it was a good thing. Although something like 5 or 6% probably said I was happy doing what I was doing and I didn't want the new opportunities. The positive things were that flexibility to choose my work location, opportunities to interact and communicate with colleagues, opportunities to apply my own ideas at work, influence on decisions that are important at work. My career advancement or promotion is now better with the new technology, accuracy and fairness of evaluations of work performance, feeling of doing some useful work. My salary was better, consistency and predictability of working. All these were the positive elements that workers liked from new technologies. But there are negatives. The worst of all is surveillance over my work and that of my colleagues. They hate cameras in the office or some things that employers give them to track how many times they type on their keyboard so that they know how long their keyboard is staying idle. That's the most hated of all, actually, as far as I know. Anyway, they don't like the pace of work because with new technologies, they have to work faster. They don't like the unsociable hours that they have to deal with work. They don't like the fact that there is more uncertainty about losing their job when they see more and more new technology, that there is abusive behavior from customers because they don't understand the new technology and they shout at the employee as if the employee is responsible for it. Health and safety is an issue. And then many new machines have made work more repetitive and routine. In contrast to the general view that that machines have taken over routine jobs, but in fact they have made it more routine because they take the decision. The machine takes it. The robot takes the decision, and the employee is just there watching it and making sure that nothing goes wrong. Okay, another feature of work is the flexibility in the choice of hours by the worker, and is frequently mentioned as a feature of good work that workers like. Several empirical studies of well-being at work concluded that having a choice of your hours is positively associated with work well-being. And this feature of good work has become more important, more popular since the pandemic. The new technologies that developed during the pandemic to facilitate remote working, like Zoom and Teams, certainly help. But also, once home working was forced on companies, most discovered that flexible working time might even improve productivity, not even working well-being. And maybe the Yuan Academy is one of those companies that discovered that Zoom has improved the productivity. Now, more recently, the 4-day week is becoming more popular as a way of reducing hours. Even in the United States, there is evidence that there is increasing demand for fewer hours of work. The American Psychological Association, in its annual survey last year, asked workers what would make a future employer attractive to them. And the things they emphasize most are related to time flexibility, including working from home or working 4-day week. And you can see that here, which surprised me. It was soon after the pandemic again, so how employers respond to mental health is an important consideration when applying for jobs. It was extremely popular, the most popular of all. But what's more surprising is that workers want to see more flexible working hours, 40% of them, workplace culture that respects time off work, about a third, ability to work remotely, another third, and 4-day week, another third. Many people that would say that that's what they expect to see in European surveys, but this was pure US. There is no fiddling there. Okay, well, that's it. My main message is that new technologies based on AI can improve the quality of work, as we've seen. Many features of them improve. Maybe they can improve productivity in some little sense, and definitely can improve worker well-being in that they can make the worker feel better about work, but only if they're applied responsibly. And both government and companies have a role to play in this responsible development. Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris. So I guess you're trying to tell us the impact of AI on work, and you present a kind of rich picture. It's a subtle picture. Basically, from some of the things I heard, some of the things you are quite sure, for example, growth and productivity will not double. So I'm happy that you kind of you disagree with Alan, but Alan is just site or ultimate. So then I think another point I remember you talk about that different countries are, well, some of them are more ready or more suitable for embracing AI technology, and US and China are kind of ahead, and Europe is kind of behind. Then you talk about the impacts on work. The good news is that it's not reducing jobs, it's creating new jobs. But then there's a lot of issues, impact positively, negatively, and also well-being matters and other stuff. And I think we'll come back to how to answer the questions impact at work later. So now let me, for the interest of time, let me move on to the third speaker for now. The third speaker is Avi Goldfarb from University of Toronto, where I graduated. And so Avi, I think I'm really looking forward for his sharing for several reasons. Avi is a chair professor in marketing in University of Toronto. He's also a chief data scientist at the Creative Destruction Lab. He's written several popular books, best-selling books on AI, including prediction machines and power and prediction. And some of his reviews he wrote, I really love, including economics of digital economy and economics of privacy, stuff like that. So I think he really, and actually many of his work were written before this wave of the AI revolution. So I'm really looking forward to how Avi will update, revise his view on AI and give us the logic that has changed and has not changed, and help us to understand what's happening right now and what's next. So Avi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be part of this, and it's a real pleasure. I see a lot of familiar faces on my screen and familiar names, and it's great to be part of this community. As we've talked about already, there is no shortage of hype around artificial intelligence, especially since November 30th, 2022, when ChatGPT was released, and that user interface of the language models made it clear to just about anybody that this technology could be transformative, because we now had machines that could write as well as many humans. Nevertheless, we remain in a world of confusion about what we're talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence. There is a real aspiration on the part of the tech community to create machines that can think and that can truly do everything we can do. To Chris's point, maybe someday we will get those. That is not what we have today. What we have today has been advances in machine learning, in computational statistics, that's prediction technology. And so while machines that can do what we can do to help us or take over the world may occur someday, that's not what we have in 2024. What we have in 2024 is prediction technology. So under the hood of these machines, and this is the theme of our first book, Prediction Machines, is that you should recognize that today's AI is prediction technology. Now, to understand why it's helpful to frame a technology as a drop in the cost of some fundamental input, it's useful to go through some technology history. Hal Varian and Carl Shapiro, in their fantastic book, Information Rules, talk about the transformation that happened in the dot-com wave in the late 1990s. 1995 was arguably the starting point of this wave. It was the year that the NSFNet, the US-based private public internet, was privatized, the last aspects of it. It was the year of Bill Gates' internet tidal wave email, when Microsoft started to dedicate their company to making the internet consumer-friendly. And it was the year on the financial markets that Netscape had their IPO, and they were valued at $1 billion without ever having made a nickel in profit. And so the hype around the internet kept building to a point where people started to say, we can throw away the old rules. The way we used to understand the economy is wrong. Forget our textbooks, forget your econ courses. We're in a new economy. And of course, we economists pushed back on that point and said, well, no, you know what? You just need to understand the technology and understand what's different. It's not a new economy. It's that search is cheap, and communication is cheap, and copying is cheap. And from Microeconomics 101, we know the demand curve slope downward. And so when the price of something falls, we do more of it. And when the price of something falls massively, we do a lot more of it. And so Varian and Shapiro and others started to point out the consequences of things like cheap copying. One was already obvious to just about anybody who was paying attention, which is that copyright was going to be a bigger deal, and protecting intellectual property was going to be a real challenge. A second might have been less obvious to people who weren't thinking deeply about what got cheaper, which was Varian and Shapiro and others pointed out that privacy was going to be a much bigger deal. Because once anything you say to anyone is now instantly broadcast around the world for free, you're going to be a lot more careful about what you say. So once we understand what's gotten cheaper, we can map out consequences. This idea has its roots in an economics of technology literature that in some cases precedes the Varian and Shapiro work. And Bresnahan and Nordhaus and others talked about compute. And fundamentally, what does your computer do? Feels like a computer does all sorts of things, but really, under the hood, the computer is just doing one thing, and it's doing that one thing extraordinarily well. It's doing arithmetic. Your computer is an arithmetic machine, an adding and logic machine. And with that adding and logic, it turns out it can do all sorts of things. And so Bresnahan and Nordhaus and others said we should think through the compute revolution as a drop in the cost of arithmetic. Arithmetic got better, faster, and cheaper, and that has led to all sorts of important applications of arithmetic that we might not have dreamed of before. The early applications of machine arithmetic were good old-fashioned arithmetic problems that we understood to be arithmetic problems, like figuring out the trajectory of a cannonball when it's shot out of a cannon. This was artillery tables was perhaps the fundamental use of machine compute in the 1940s and early 1950s. And we used to have humans who did that job. His job was called computer. And by 1960, humans were no longer doing those calculations. Accountants used to spend their time adding up columns of numbers. That's what they did. But with the rise of machine arithmetic and the spreadsheet, accountants no longer spend all sorts of time adding up columns of numbers. The machine does that for them. In both of these cases, note that there's still plenty of humans with similar skills doing related work. There's still plenty of bookkeepers and accountants, because the people who are good at the arithmetic also happened to be good at using that arithmetic for company strategy and tax policy. And in the context of the human computers, they overwhelmingly became central to the early software industry. But around 1970, sometime in the 70s anyway, things began to change, and we realized, and we understood that a lot of applications that used to be solved with other tools could increasingly be solved practically with arithmetic. Games turned out to be an arithmetic problem. Mail turned out to be an arithmetic problem. Music turned out to be solvable with arithmetic, and pictures. Kodak was fundamentally a chemical engineering company. They solved pictures with chemistry. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, as machine arithmetic got cheap enough, we realized that we could reframe that problem, pictures, as an arithmetic problem. Now, once we start to realize that the set, as arithmetic got cheap enough, the set of problems that could be solved with arithmetic exploded to a point where we no longer thought of these as arithmetic problems. It's still nonetheless useful to understand under the hood what the technology can do. And so if you want to play a video game, especially during the early era before there was AI embedded in the games, you needed to understand that the machine had patterns. The game was based on patterns. Under the hood, it was based on arithmetic. To play video games well, you understand that the machine responds to exactly what you put into whatever input you put in. To work with computers, whether it's for CAD or any other application, you need to understand at a high level that under the hood, the machine responds to exactly your instructions. Even though you don't need to know the arithmetic deeply, the intuition that the computer is a arithmetic and logic machine is fundamental to working well with computing. So when we think about artificial intelligence, we're going to first try to understand under the hood what the technology does. And then we're going to close today with how does that help us understand the human skills needed to work well with a prediction machine. So, as I said, we should think about AI as a drop in the cost of prediction. At some point in the past decade, technological change in machine learning and computational statistics grew, increased extraordinarily to the point where machine prediction is a lot cheaper than it used to be. And that's played out in a similar way to how it did with arithmetic. Many of the early applications of machine prediction were problems that we would easily understand as prediction. Like you walk into a bank and you want a loan, and the loan officer used to look you up and down and decide based on their intuition and maybe some other things whether they should give you a loan. But what they're really deciding is they're predicting whether you're going to pay back a loan. That's arguably the oldest prediction problem in business. And increasingly, lenders are using machine learning tools. They're using AI to predict whether they're going to pay back a loan. Similarly, the insurance industry, they're in the business of pricing risk. That's what they do. They're in the business of prediction. And for the past 2 decades, they've been increasingly embedded machine learning. They've been increasingly embedding AI into their underwriting tools. But what started to happen over the past decade or so is we've realized there's a whole bunch of applications that we didn't used to think of as prediction that have been reframed as prediction. Language translation. This supposed to be an image of the Tower of Babel. Language translation is prediction. And increasingly, we used to think of language translation as a linguistics problem or a human intuition problem. We're increasingly realizing what you're doing is you're predicting the set of words in French that is the best match for English. Or, as is happening right now in this simultaneous translation, the set of words in Chinese that's the best match for the words that I'm using in English. Also, medical diagnosis is prediction. What does your doctor do when they diagnose you? They take in data about your symptoms, and they fill in the missing information of the cause of those symptoms. That's prediction. Our intuition doesn't identify these things, or may not identify these things as prediction. But increasingly, we're realizing that they can be solved with prediction tools. OpenAI's tools, the language models, are also prediction. ChatGPT, as Alan pointed out right at the beginning, is a predict the next word engine. That's what's going on under the hood. And the image generation tools are also predicting the set of pixels that's the best response to your query. For some intuition on this, if you ask for an image of an astronaut on a horse in the style of Andy Warhol, you might get an image like this. This is not a search engine. So it's not that this image was in its database when I asked for the image of an astronaut on a horse in the style of Andy Warhol. Instead, presumably, there were images of pictures of people on horses. There were images of astronauts and images of the style of Andy Warhol. And the machine, the prediction machine, identified the set of pixels, predicted the set of pixels that's the best response to a query when I ask for an astronaut on a horse in the style of Andy Warhol. Underneath the hood, again, as Alan hinted at earlier, has been an extraordinary increase in the complexity of these models. OpenAI's first model, GPT-1, used 110 million parameters. And we've had an exponential increase since then in terms of the number of parameters. This is expensive. And to give you a sense of the scope of these changes, that $1 billion that Microsoft put in the summer of 2019 led to this. ChatGPT wasn't just growing at this, it's an exponential growth, but it's just an extraordinary increase, an extraordinary change in the number of parameters and the complexity of these models. And that is what's going on under the hood to make prediction machines move from helping us predict whether someone's going to pay back a loan to writing and drawing and coding. Now, the second day of Econ 101, we teach people that when coffee gets cheap, you don't want to be in the tea business because tea and coffee are substitutes. And so many of the change in skills that you saw from Chris's presentation have a little taste of this substitution side of things. As some of the 2016 skills were no longer relevant in 2022, some of them were because they were just table stakes, like being able to use Windows. But some of them were, the machines can do that. We don't need humans to do that anymore. Tea and coffee are substitutes. So machine prediction and human prediction are substitutes. Of course, the opportunity lies in the complements. And so the question and the key thing we need to understand as machine prediction gets cheaper are what are the complements, what are the cream and sugar to machine prediction? And so what Ajay, Joshua, and I in our books have emphasized is this idea of judgment. Judgment informally is knowing which predictions to make and what to do with those predictions once you have them. More formally, it's the process of identifying the payoffs at the end of the decision tree. Understanding utility. What are we really trying to maximize? My favorite science fiction example to understand judgment comes from this movie, I, Robot. In I, Robot, Will Smith plays the protagonist, Detective Spooner. And Detective Spooner hates robots. The reason he hates robots is some years ago, he was in a car accident with a little girl. And for whatever reason, both Detective Spooner and a little girl are about to drown. And a robot comes along and saves him and not the girl. And that's why he hates robots. Because it was a machine, importantly, he could audit it. He could figure out, why did the machine save him and not the girl? And the machine predicted that he had a 45% chance of survival, and the girl had an 11% chance of survival. And 45 is more than 11, and therefore the machine saved him and not the girl. Detective Spooner goes on to say, but 11% was more than enough, and a human being would have known that. Well, that's a statement about values. That's a statement about judgment. The machine just had a prediction of 45 versus 11. Some team of fictional human engineers at some point in the past embedded that machine with the values that a life is a life. To say that all lives are equal is judgment. And that even in this science fiction example required somebody to tell the machine what mattered. That process is embedding judgment into the AI, and that remains a fundamental human role in deploying AIs. It's not just in science fiction, right? So AI can change the time and place of judgment. It's still judgment, but instead of the rescuer on the ground deciding on the relative value and who to save, it's the engineers who embedded that in the machine some time ago and in a different place. When we hear that machines are hiring and firing people, it's the same idea. When you hear that AI is deciding who gets a raise, who gets promoted, or who gets fired, that is a team of HR managers or engineers at headquarters deciding that their judgment on who gets hired and fired and promoted is better than the individual managers on the ground in each of those organizations. So what this is in each of their stores or restaurants or warehouses, right? So what AI is enabling is a change in the people who gets to decide, whose judgment is embedded in very consequential decision-making. And in this context, it's centralizing away from individual managers on the ground in restaurants and stores to headquarters. So, AI can actually change the core decision makers within a company, sometimes expanding the scope of decision power and sometimes the opposite. Now, what's happening with the language models and the rise of generative AI under the hood is it's important to recognize the fundamental role of human judgment in building these models. So how, for example, was ChatGPT trained? Well, first you had a human labeler demonstrating desired output, desired behavior. Okay, so as part, in addition to the corpus of all text on the internet or wherever it was found, there was a human giving examples of good and bad responses. Okay. And then perhaps more importantly, the labeler, so in response to various queries, a human labeler ranks the outputs from best to worst in terms of whether they're honest, helpful, and harmless. So OpenAI has decided that the important values in a language model are that it's honest, as in it tells the truth, that it's helpful, as in it tries to respond to whatever you asked for, and that it's harmless in that it doesn't offend anybody. Importantly, those three values are often at odds. Sometimes honest feedback can offend. Sometimes the model may not have a good answer, and so it may not be able to be helpful. And so it has to decide to be, or maybe a helpful response is mean, and so it's not harmless. And so the values that the leadership of OpenAI embedded into their machine involve a weighting of the importance of honest, helpful, and harmless. And so what you need to recognize when you choose a particular AI model, a particular language model, and image and video is going to have the same phenomenon, is that you are choosing the judgment, the values of the leadership of those companies. And OpenAI's model gives you very different judgment, very different values than Grok, and then Anthropic, and I assume then Ernie, though I don't know on Ernie. And what you need to, so if you're a company delegating some decision-making to an LLM, you're not delegating decision-making, you're not delegating the judgment to some machine. What you're doing is delegating that judgment to another company, to a large tech company, and the values that are embedded in that company. So AI can move judgment out of one company and to another. And so what you need to understand, the reason you need to understand that AI is a prediction machine is first, it's that data is a core input to that. But that, I think, is obvious to most folks. But more subtly, this important role of judgment means that AI can change the time, place, employee, division, or organization that drives decision-making. Thank you.
Can you, sorry, Avi, can you add, firstly, I want to own Ben. So you are next up to summarize what you hear from the three previous speakers. But let me ask a quick question to Avi. So you end saying that it is a prediction machine, but then it can change your last slide. Can you elaborate slightly on this?
Sure. So here, I'll put that back up. Okay, so AI can change the time of a decision, as in, as in that example of the rescue. So, if there's a human rescuer on the ground deciding on a rescue, then their decision-making happens exactly as the rescue is being carried out. If there is some automated process, a machine conducting that rescue, then it is, the values were embedded in that machine some time ago. Okay. Or similarly, if we think about using an AI for hiring, right now, with a human process for hiring, an individual HR worker, human resources worker, is looking at a resume or interviewing a candidate and deciding at that moment and in that place whether to hire them. Instead, if we have an automated system, that automated system could be created in the past at a different time and often at a different place. So a lot of these automated systems are being used for hiring, are being deployed by a headquarters of a retailer or a restaurant chain, or a warehouse manager. And then they're deployed around the country or around the world, so that over time, their decisions get scaled and affect hiring, not just at the headquarters, but around the whole company. So that's how it changes the time, place, employee, and even potentially the division within a company, whether it's the headquarters or the HR group. Okay. And then when we start to think about outsourcing AI, whether you're using Copilot or some other tool, to the extent that that the AI isn't just providing a structure for your own ideas, but the AI is actually helping you communicate, or even generating ideas and helping you make decisions, then you're delegating some of that judgment, some of that decision-making to the tech company. And so if you're, for example, if you're using OpenAI to give you instructions on what to do, then what you're actually doing is trusting the judgment of the OpenAI leadership team on what matters in terms of what's helpful, honest, and harmless. And you agree with their weighting of those three things. Instead, if you're using Grok, then you're trusting the leadership of Grok, that their judgment about what matters and what's a good model and what's a good set of values is the appropriate one. So what AI is doing is the AI is doing the prediction. And so now there's this increased important role for judgment. But that judgment, and that sounds optimistic in the sense that it's human. We still have humans doing that kind of decision making, but it could be different humans, and it could potentially massively centralize power. Or there are other examples where it can decentralize power. That's a decision that we make on how we want to use and deploy these tools.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much, Avi. So the next speaker was supposed to be Amit Gandhi, but Amit made a mistake. He thought it would be tomorrow, so he wouldn't be talking today. But so we're gonna bring him back next time. But on the fortunate side of this, that actually we are running out of time. So I think we're gonna have many more occasions we could talk about issues back and forth. So let me turn to Bengt Holmström to conclude. And so I'm hoping that the three speakers before that provide enough fuel and the stimulation for Ben to just think about to reflect, assess and reflect, and think about takeaways and some concluding remarks. Then we open up with more discussion and questions. Bengt Holmström is a Nobel Prize winner. Ben doesn't need a more introduction, and so I'm given interest of time. Let's hear Ben's thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Long. Can you hear me?
Yes, very much.
So this is a fascinating set of issues, rather different in some ways, different angles of things, and the first speaker is the biggest challenge for me because it was rather technical, but doesn't make it less interesting. Fortunately, Long already made some comments, but I think this idea of slow versus fast thinking that it applies to this context is fascinating. It actually raises the issue: are we just prediction machines ourselves? And I find that question very pertinent, and I will maybe come back to that. That's one of the things I had that has influenced my thinking. I use a lot of I spend maybe an hour or so every day talking to Charlie. Charlie is the name of my given name to the chat GPT. So Charlie and I are talking every day. And Charlie knows me pretty well, and I can always make references to my past conversations if I pull them up. So that's just a personal reflection on this thing. You should understand I have no insight into technology or these things. I just have interacted mainly with the chat GPT. So I have a very, let's say, as a starting point, I have a very positive view of it, though I realize there are a lot of problems. But it certainly, I'm 75, by the way, and it's a godsend, this Charlie, because he tells me all sorts of things that I keep forgetting and so on. So it's a lifesaver for older people. I think that's something that tends to be missed here, that it's really extended our useful life quite a bit, as long as we live. So I'm not going to repeat what Long said about Alan's talk. I'm just going to ask a question which is very, Europe oriented, which is in this question of, maybe it raised to me that, how is it that this may change, the sad situation with Europe, if I put it that way, that is that they are so far behind. Will Europe need some new layers, or can you sort of comment? What does it mean for the Europes being so far, falling behind China and the United States? We don't have any platforms, for instance, so we have if I imagine we have limited capacity to generate our own sort of data that we need and so on. So maybe I take all these questions, but this is the first question to Alan, is the question of what it will, is our focus on B2B, and I'm speaking our, because I'm still just a Finnish citizen and a citizen of Europe in that sense. Is it going to, there's a worry in my mind that we are just B2B people. But will this actually suggest that B2B is just fine and we can live off, the US and China insights about generating data and so on? So maybe this is irrelevant as a question, but as a practical question, I think it's very important for the US.
Ben, what do you
For
mean
Europe.
by when you
What?
say B2B?
Business to business. That is,
business.
we are not, I mean, that's why we don't have such valuations as, we have all the highly valued, companies, except for NVIDIA is basically B2C. It has grown very fast and it's highly scalable, whereas B2B tends not to be as much scalable. But if I understood Alan's point was that somehow, we are not seeing this kind of stark separation between data generation and application. But we think of application layers. And another question related to this, or another way of phrasing it, is to which part will actually cash in most. Where is the layer where the money is really going to be made? And so that's another way of asking, does this look a little brighter for Europe or not? Do you want to answer? Shall I first hear the answer and go to Chris's talk, or should I?
I think probably.
What?
I don't. Yeah, you can. I think you can dictate however it goes. Maybe Alan can answer, or we can discuss. Yeah.
Okay, so I should continue with Chris's talk. Or do you want Alan
Either
to
way
answer
it goes
that?
is fine.
Either way.
You can force
Okay,
Alan to
so
act.
let me go to Chris's talk. So Chris is obviously is closest to mine, and it's sort of very, let's say, practice oriented, and I thought it was as always, Chris understands a lot about labor markets and has obviously thought deeply about this question of what AI will do for people, and I thought he was more positive than I thought he might be, but which is good. But he emphasized very much this sort of social dimensions, and that's another place where he said Europe might be actually better than China, and better placed than China and the US, and maybe because they cultures are so it's multicultural and individual cultures have an easier time to think about the social dimensions. I'm thinking about small countries like Sweden or Finland and so on. They deal with this, let's call them emotional intelligence problems, perhaps better than a very big country. This is total speculation, but I was pleased to see that they sort of much more augmenting, that you were very much more positive about augmenting than substitution. That your data, that's the way I interpret you as reading the data. That's saying that there has been much more evidence of augmenting than about substitution. So there's also substitution. I want to bring it to a different dimension of this question, which is what will it do to really creative thinking? And if you think about I thought a lot about creative thinking and creative thinking at some level, or put it simply, asking questions is a lot harder than answering questions. You can see it from the Nobel Prize. If you go and look at the Nobel Prizes, you will see that they are always given to people who have asked in a new way a question. Once you ask the question in the right way, you sort of put the finger on the critical spot. And I must say, Avi's talk was just a grand example of this. If you put your finger on the right spot, ask the right question, there are a lot of people that can answer it. If I put it a little differently, if I think about PhD programs in economics, but I think it probably applies everywhere else, the hardest part of any PhD program is to transition the students from answering questions which they had done, 18 years or 20 years or whatever, when they enter, depending on what they have been through, transitioning them from answering questions to asking questions. In my view, that's 90% of the pain in the PhD program. They get really stuck when they keep answering, they even in the beginning of PhD program, they first have to take classes and so they continue, answering questions. But then comes the third year, in the case at least of MIT, and boy, is that a hard year for them, because now they have to figure out what is a question I really could be working on. And so I just want to emphasize that the question in my mind, a big question in my mind when it comes to this question of what does it do to people, is, how does it change, the people's ability to sort of focus on the right questions. And I feel that this computer is also, going to Avi's point, these programs are very much about just answering questions in some ways. So that's, by the way, a practical thing also. When one interacts every day with ChatGPT, you learn to ask questions. That's an interesting dimension of it. So in some sense, you learn to formulate questions and be clearer about, what does ChatGPT need, in order to get a sort of semi-intelligent answers. And so that's a positive about asking questions. But I'm also worried about how do we learn to answer questions? I think mainly about children and young people. What does it do if they get too fast a question? Think of young children. There's a progression from kind of learning from data and then answering questions. The children learn questions, but you can't jump on them with some very big questions immediately. If you jump straight into some big question, well, they will get the answer, but they will not answer why was that the right answer, so to speak. So they don't get the understanding of how is the mapping from what they knew before into what they now know. What else has it brought with you? And so I'm kind of worried about this ability for children to grow up slowly, so to speak. What happens to them if they jump too fast over? We know creativity is all about making mistakes. We know, Edison's old statement, so answer the question of how do we get to be more creative, he says, fail more. So it's the failing that they don't get to experience in the same way that they get to experience it. Now, this is just totally speculative, and the computer could, or these prediction machines could be, I'm sure, trained to, go at a particular pace and so on. But I think it is a very interesting question. Is how will this affect this sort of gradual versus very quick response? We know as parents, we know that we should let the child, struggle with something. It's not just that it answers simple questions. You need to struggle with things. Creativity is all about hitting constraints. And if you get your answers right away, you never get to experience where the constraints and what underlies it. So I think this is a dimension that I would think would be interesting to study. I know Chris was looking at what has it done to people. So he was giving us empirical data about things. But I'm trying to emphasize that, what we study also in terms of what it has done. I think these thoughts about creativity is something that would be worthwhile. That line of reasoning would be worthwhile, in my view, to pursue. So that's my comment on Chris. Avi's presentation was I already mentioned it. I said, I've come to think that we are prediction machines. There is the question of what is genetics and what's learning. And it's obviously we are all the time fed data, so we are sort of continuously learning in some sense. But even if we think about it helps actually to think about, it has helped me to think about, say, the political struggles we are seeing right now. The fact that we are so polarized, it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just that they have been fed very different data than I have been fed. I suspect if I had grown up in, Texas, I would be a totally different person. Maybe a very strong Trump supporter. I'm not, because I've grown up in Scandinavia, where the culture is very different. So my point is here that one thing that one could think about is actually to have machines argue with machines. You can get this ChatGPT in two versions, so to speak, training it on Texas data, training it on a Swedish data or something like that, and then negotiate. And then you see, and I'm actually going to talk to a person who has done some of this in just 2 hours when I go to lunch with him, that then you see how much better they may reach some kind of compromise of understanding of each other. And there's actually already evidence that the machine is a better partner to a person who is, say, a Scandinavian sort of liberal-minded person. And then you talk about abortion with it. Give it to the machine from Texas, the Texas machine, so to speak, to talk with the person or argue with the person about abortion, which is a very hard question. There is no probably no right and wrong answer, and they get along much better. The machine and the two very different opinions sort of reach a middle ground much better than it does if you have two people. And we can, it's an interesting thing. And then machine versus machine may teach us a lot more still about, these differences. And so I give it as it's sort of, it's on this theme about, are we just prediction machines? Avi. So I really enjoyed. I don't know what Avi thinks. I mean, are you thinking that we actually are 99% prediction machines in the sense that it's all data and very little genetics, or is there some very, very sophisticated genetic engineering that has been going on? I suspect it's both, but where the boundary is interesting. But I think in this sense, it's also going back to Chris's thing. It is a positive. They can play a very positive role in situations like this, having tensions in both places or something, having them talk to machines or having them talk with them. I mean, I see a lot of opportunities to sort of humanize or look at the prediction machines as very human and see their role in sort of helping us understand ourselves as maybe not as human as we think. So those are some of my reflections. Very high level of reflections are very different.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. I think you have some great insights. So I think given the interest of time, I also have questions, but I think I'm going to firstly jump in with the one question Ben asks. Then I think we're going to open up for the additional comments. We have a lot of the great people who can chip in. So the question here, I think it's interesting that both Alan and Avi some kind of talk about the power of AI in prediction, but then Chris warned us that we try to not predict too much into the future. So I guess a quick question, actually earlier I was asking Alan, but maybe you guys can answer me that perhaps that the AI, my first question is actually for Avi. Do you feel that the ChatGPT basically its power kind of is really consistent with your view on prediction machine, like that you talk about all these things, and For Alan, you've done so many things, like the large language models in many areas seems to look good. So what's really the power behind this?
Okay. So in a technical sense, absolutely, this is a prediction machine. Okay. So, and the question I've been trying to get my head around for the last year or so, maybe 2 years, is even though it doesn't feel like prediction, as in 3 years ago, we wouldn't have thought of writing as a prediction task. How important is it, or more precisely, when is it useful to understand what the technology does? And so had you asked me this question pre-ChatGPT, I would have said it's useful to understand AI's prediction for 3 reasons. First, it helps you identify AI applications. Second, it helps you understand the role of data in creating good predictions. And third, it helps you understand the importance of judgment, of telling the machine what matters and which predictions to make. ChatGPT and the other sort of generative models that we've seen in the past 2 years have made me the action of giving business leaders the intuition, look for predictions in your company. Those are going to be good for AI. That advice doesn't work anymore. Okay, actually, a lot of the things are the uses for AI are things they didn't used to think of as prediction. But I think the other 2 lessons remain. Data is still fundamental, and especially the judgment point, because now that we are outsourcing so much of what we do with AI to other companies, what we might be doing, if we do it blindly, is outsourcing the core decision making of one company to others, to the tech companies. And so I think like that's the way I think about it. That's the framing I've been me and my co-authors have been unpacking over the past year.
So maybe the part of the challenge and the future is, how do we define what is prediction, and are we human beings? Are we prediction machines? To what extent are we?
So that's a great question, and I have no idea. I don't pretend to have expertise in that. And so the framing or the framework that I go with is it's useful to understand the machines in that context. And if someone has the hypothesis that humans are prediction machines, then maybe it's useful to understand us humans in that context too. But that's for somebody with different expertise than me. That's not about the economics of technology as I see it.
Okay. Alan, you want to chip in a little bit?
Sure. Add on what Avi just said about prediction machines. I think AI probably are more than maybe human beings, even for human beings relate to what Long just asked, is probably not only prediction machines, but also decision machines. Like Chris said right at the beginning, the top managers of company not only predict things, but also make decisions. You have so many options of what decisions you're gonna take. That relates to my comment about AI actually. They are not only actually relate to what Ben asked before. So Ben asked about what values, where are the values of AI, where the value generation will be. I would say number 1, of course, is the infrastructure, right? Just like Long mentioned about for electricity, you first build the infrastructure for AI, but then you build the infrastructure. What I meant including both hardware and software. Okay, so hardware is like as I mentioned during my talk, like GPUs, right? They are highly sought after assets in AI circle. But then you have the software layer, and that is, I think, is important, critical for the time being. At the same time, I see the rise of application. But here the application had 2 things, actually. I didn't elaborate, but since Avis talked about it, one type of applications are based on large language models, but the other ones are based on decision capacity of AI or Gen AI. So they are not only making predicting next token, but also make decisions like AlphaGo, like the other decisions in a Go game. You make decisions where you're gonna put the stone in the chess in the Go board. You have a sequence of decisions to make for whatever goals you want to make, like but not diagnosis for a patient, for investment decision, which stock or which portfolio you're gonna pick or design. So once we talk about that, I think, of course, ChatGPT is prediction machines, but I think for agents, that is a LLMs, foundation models, combined with a decision mechanism built based on AI, like what I mentioned, like AlphaGo, right? But it's different. It's not AlphaGo. I mean, to be more accurate, that is called reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning can, help us to do or other type of online learning method to do decision based on a machine learning framework. So for application, probably the first application will be based on content generation, like professional Cs, like Midjourney for art design, for writing reports. But then based on that, we move to more mission critical applications. That's where the more value will be, like finance, like scientific applications. Actually, that's I would say it's a good timing for us to talk about it, because the 2 Nobel Prizes are awarded for AI researchers this year. And I was lucky to have dinner with a Nobel committee, actually. He was in charge of Erding, maybe you guys know him. He was in charge of Nobel Prize for many years for physics and chemistry. And we talk about maybe AI will do more in the future for scientific research, and also for healthcare. I mentioned that before. But then I will say that will be go beyond that in the longer run, if you look at longer time frame. So that's what I meant by embodied AI. In Avi's talk at the beginning, we showed the iRobot movie, or the Skynet, basically Terminator. There's a physical form of AI. And people are doing that. And there are many startups, both in Europe and in China, as far as I know, to build robots, basically to, for manufacturing, for healthcare, for caring old people at home, and so on. And that goes beyond the digital world to physical world. And also that requires a lot of decision makings. So I think that's happening, but for time being, I would say GPU will still be a booming business, from GPU training to inference, a cloud. And I think that I will see the tech sector growing for the coming years. And then it's the application, in particular agents based on applications. And also
Okay.
I'll maybe mention Ben's, maybe I will answer later for Ben's question about Europe AI, but I can do that later, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are many burning questions. For example, Ben really want to know how should countries, and actually, if we think about countries and companies, individuals, how should we embrace AI? Stuff like that. I know many questions, but I think for the interest of time, firstly, I want to mention it's possible that we might extend beyond the original time. Which means differently for different people. But I think we might be a half an hour more. And obviously, whoever feel interested can stay. And there are many questions. But now I would like to open up the floor for some of the comments. Anybody wants to chip in a little bit?
You didn't ask Chris if he wants to say something.
Yes, Chris, do you want to add something, or yeah?
No, no. I mean, I agree with the comments. The only thing I could say actually about prediction that you were saying, the prediction I was talking that is very dangerous to make is a prediction about the future, not in the sense of here are some symptoms and I'm using AI to predict what the disease might be. Currently, this is more the latter kind of prediction, which I think is the one that Avi was mainly emphasizing, is more like statistical estimation. You can say there's a 95% probability that this is the disease, or there might be a 60% probability that it's something else. That it's that kind of prediction, which of course we do in science and economics all the time. The prediction that I said is dangerous to make, because everyone who's trying to make a mistake was what's going to happen in the future. I mentioned the WLA meeting in Shanghai that I went. One of the physics Nobel laureates there was predicting that would definitely be a nuclear war within the next 10 years. And even had the scenarios of how it was going to take place. And unless governments completely change their way of behaving now, otherwise it will happen. That's the kind of prediction that is very, very dangerous. He even went as far as saying we shouldn't care much about climate change, because there will be no climate to save, in the next 10 years. That's the kind of prediction that I don't understand how scientists, physicians, and computer scientists, that are so much into that now, when we always thought it was economists who were doing this kind of forecasting and predicting, and not the scientists. Now the other issue about Europe is a topic in itself, of course. Where is it going to go, given what's got to this point? But I don't know if you read, which I didn't, or listened at least to Mario Draghi explaining the main point of his report. But I basically think he got it right in that he was saying that it is too late to try and compete with the big American or Chinese, but much more American, obviously in Europe, digital companies. There's no point in trying to find an alternative to Meta and its WhatsApp and Facebook, or an alternative to Amazon or Apple in Europe. The best investment we can make in digital technologies in Europe is to adapt what the Americans are doing, say in OpenAI, Google, and all that, to European special needs and the special problems that is confronting Europe. Because despite the similarities between the European and the North American economies, we do have many, many differences. And if we rely entirely on American digital technology, on everything we are doing, we're not going to learn much about the problems that concern us. For example, how to run a national health service. The Americans don't care. There was Obamacare, did an epsilon step, and Trump just destroyed it immediately. Our national health services in Europe, they've either collapsed or are in the threat of collapsing. Well, maybe AI technologies can save it in some way. They can help us reorganize it. They can tell us where we can apply it and where we cannot apply it. And yet we are not doing it. We're just struggling. Even here, every now and then there is a report. There was one a few months ago that the new government in Britain commissioned, and the guy, Lord Darcy, I think he was called, a top medical guy, it just said it's collapsing. There is no rescue. It's gone. Unless you do something really, really drastic, find more money, reorganize, but they're not prepared to do it because it's a vote loser. And maybe adapting, it's a good example of how we can adapt the digital technologies we know to save our social state, if governments and voters are putting so much importance on it. But then they're gradually letting it become more and more marginalized, and until it's destroyed, and until you cannot get good quality health services in the end, which we cannot. In Britain, we cannot, unless we go private and pay lots of money. I think that's a good way forward. I don't know if Ben agrees as the other European on the panel, but
I have just one comment about, actually it's not just Chris, is this question about about, the machine can't do this, and humans can do. I mean, humans are very varied in what they can do. So there's a lot of things. We seem to assume that we somehow are good at slow thinking or whatever we admire, reasoning. But I'm coming back to again this notion that we used to think there was a sort of a learning process where you inductively first over the child learns inductively and eventually shifts to somehow deductively things and that's how we have that's how we are learning. We build our models and we build our understanding. But I'm not sure how much more sophisticated it is, and so I would one should focus a lot also on what our limitations are in terms of how we have specialized them. And I would coming back to the main point. Main point is that we need to also understand why answers are answers. This is one of the things that I think. That's the business we are in some sense as academics. We're trying to understand, things, not just getting the answers, but why how is the reasoning behind these answers. And I don't know, I frankly don't know how good AI is. Very focused things like how did you create this algorithm or this code or something? They are excellent. They will tell exactly what they did. But then there are other types of questions to which they answer something, but very hard to explain why. I haven't succeeded. I mean, they give answers if you ask them. You can ask them, why did you answer this question? But they sort of pretty quickly end up in sort of a circle. They don't go deep enough. I don't know if Avi has a different view on this how good they are sort of explaining why they are answering what they are answering.
They're getting better, but I think we need major technological progress in explainability. So right now, I think explainability is generally a fiction, as in these are multi-million or billion parameter models, and we're saying we can explain them in a way that the human brain understands. That to me sounds crazy. And there are readings of the European laws that suggest that they're regulating, it's saying that you can't really use machine learning or AI. You have to use simple regression models with three factors, I think there's an opportunity for innovation. There must be some way maybe to explain in a useful way, but either right now it's a convenient fiction in that we're simplifying a multi-million parameter model into 3 or 4 things that humans can understand, which is basically a lie, or we are saying that it's not, that you can't really use the best technology. And so I suspect there is an opportunity to do better. And actually from some of the things Alan said at the beginning, it sounds like we're making progress in that. But I don't think we're there yet.
Anybody?
I want to add on this point. Yes, it's important to develop explainable AI, but we are not there yet. So we are towards that direction. That's where the technology is currently.
So
and that's actually promising, and one of the most important direction for AI currently.
Okay, I would like to, maybe somebody in the audience has a burning desire to have a comment or question. Let's open up this a little bit, then come back to, yeah. Anybody wants to talk a bit?
Well, I had one simple comment. It was put in the chat already. I think it's possible the Europeans could actually benefit from a somewhat different IP regime than we have presently. If you think what the AI companies are doing now, it's why they've been sued. The Artists Guild, the Writers Guild feel as though their work is either being copied or unfairly used or creating unjust, enrichment or unfair competition. And our current IP regimes make this actually rather hard to deal with. If we simply use standard property rights, negotiating with millions of copyright or property owners just isn't feasible. The transactions cost would kill you. But if you use open source, folks don't want to contribute their data. So you need something in between that might actually do that. And I think the Europeans, I think if there were a fairness regime, something perhaps related to the Shapley value, as an example, you might get greater willingness to contribute data from which it's possible to train the systems and which it's possible to get more motivation for people to put data into the systems. And I don't see that emerging in the United States. I see that emerging in Europe more promptly than in the US.
Thanks, Marshall. Anybody else wants to chip in a bit?
Yeah. I just want to add on what was just said. China actually is, in terms of property rights, China now is experimenting the data property rights. They call three different type of property rights: rights of holding, rights of managing, and also rights of how do you say, manufacturing. So I think that's kind of a way. It's kind of innovative. It's not either this data is yours or mine. But no, there are a lot of uncertainties in that dimension. I think want to add this.
That's an interesting idea. It strikes me that that's still unbundling the different attributes of the rights associated with the ownership, but it's not necessarily solving the negotiation problem necessary to gain access to vast quantities. So I think it's an interesting stepping stone, the unbundling, but I don't know that addresses the transactions cost question.
Well, they have established a lot of exchanges, data exchanges, and government actually is in the process of trying to supply the public data, because in China, I mean, the government has everything, so they are trying to supply this in the past year or two, actually accelerating this process. So hopefully there will be more and more data.
Okay, anybody else wants to ask questions? So let me continue with some questions. So a question is about, do you think it's a disruption, or is this a great enabler? So we know that it's affecting a lot of us, obviously, for countries, companies, and individuals. But you see, it's been benefiting the current companies a lot, in a sense that it's a great enabler. I'm not seeing enough disruption. Are we waiting for this, or this is the nature of the technology? Basically, AI is information processing technology. It's really enabling information holders. That's my question. So maybe some of you want to answer, Alan, or the speakers. Yeah, Chris.
I think my take is that it's both a enabler and a disruptor. Yes, currently it's a co-pilot mode, is helping, say, professionals to do their job easier. But at the same time, it's once it gets better with more training data, more in-depth analysis capacity, then you will probably reconstruct the workflow. Then it becomes a disruptor, because the organization, companies are organized based on the workflow, right? We talk about, Avi talk about credit scoring and the insurance claiming process. But all of these are based on previous technology. Once I have new technology, the whole process could be disrupted. Then yeah, new things might happen. The underlying under the hood, I mean, from interface it looks the same, but what's being done can be very different from what's done before. So that's my view. Yeah.
So what do you think, Chris?
I think actually on the issue of data, I mean, it's obvious that the current regime need a lot of data. I think what we need is partly what if you can see the comments, this Jin Yu just asked the question, and I said to him, it's the $1 million question that no one has been able to answer, is what kind of regulation there is. In fact, it is my view. I collaborated with a guy called Fadi Farah as well on a book called Quantum Governance, which argues for sharing the data. Like when Europeans, for example, the European Commission sees that some big American company like Google has broken its privacy rules or its regulation rules, and they go and fine them billions and billions of dollars. I think they should request their data instead. They say if you want to continue functioning in Europe, you have to give your data, because it would be very useful for economic policy and very useful for our own companies to grow. And yet they are not doing it. I don't know why. I'm so in favor of sharing data, and it's obviously the direction. There's a previous comment about open access. The direction the profession is going. Like journal publishers, they are complaining that they cannot make any money anymore. I'm currently the president of the Royal Economic Society. Our finances are in a mess because we cannot sell the economic journal, and there are other journals like we did before, simply because the articles are open access. So who would buy a subscription? They just get them online, and I think this it should be extended, and especially should be made available to the public sector. Of course, you might say, well, if it's made available to government to enact economic policies, it's extremely dangerous and all that. Well, it's dangerous, and then the issue is how do you regulate it, not to open up many risks. And that's why I said it's the $1 million question that no one has been able to answer. But that's what the AI people should be working on. And in fact, I talked to at least two in the meeting I mentioned with the AI scientists that are working exactly on that, but they haven't got anywhere very much yet. Both Turing Award winners, not new in the business. But the idea also, actually, I have very, very strong objections to something that so many of the scientists are saying, including Elon Musk when he was in London last year, and Altman hinted at it now, which is that if we develop a technology that has various capabilities, then it will be applied. I think that's so false when you look at humans' history. I mean, we're humans. We have enemies. We argue with people all the time. There are people who make us feel very unhappy. I mentioned that divorce makes people very unhappy. A quick solution: you just go to the kitchen, get the knife, and kill the other party, and it's finished. Why don't we do it? The capability is there. We have the technology to do it. Because we are humans. Humans don't use whatever technology is available to eliminate the other humans. So why would employers use this AI technology to eliminate workers and make themselves even richer? We just don't do it. It's not that. There is no religion, as far as I know, actually, that recommends it. Well, obviously I was brought up within Christianity. Christianity would certainly object very, very strongly to using AI for those things that Alan mentioned or Elon Musk mentioned before. But I'm sure Buddhism does the same, and Hinduism or whatever. The few things I read about them, and it's the nature of humanity. Animals don't do it either. I mean, do you see animals just, I mean, they kill for food, but that's because of their own survival. It's not, once we are past the subsistence stage, we have kind of morality, you know, there are ethics, there is morality, you know, like Aristotle was writing about these things 2,500 years ago, and we're still applying them, you know, the ethical behavior in a civilized society. And that's the sense in which I'm saying I just don't see all this new technology replacing people everywhere, except for the fortunate few that happen to have the robots to control us.
So that's probably, as Avi commented earlier, that we are probably prediction machines with value systems. We have judgments. So we're not just prediction machines. But let me come up with another.
We have ethics. You know, we have ethics. So studying the ethics of AI is extremely important.
Right. I think Alan also mentioned this earlier. So I think that's a good question raised by in audience. Bao Zhong raised a good question because the data, you know, really is in a lot of big tech companies. You know, it's information rich, and also they have technology. Would the AI revolution makes those big tech companies just even more dominant? But you see, what we observe in the United States is that the two things happens at the same time. One is that the big tech companies become so much bigger. But in the meantime, its number of startups is at a record high. And Alan, you are working for a startup. So maybe you can, from your point of view, you can tell us that do you think hopeless, or do you think that there's a lot of rooms for the startups, for the so-called decentralized efforts?
Uh, I don't think that's the end of say the history, right? So I think new companies will arise for sure. So yes, I would say established tech giants have their own advantages, but they also have their baggages, right? I think history are kind of repeating itself. And especially for, also, I think there's something different for AI, because the technology really touches the very nature of human beings, the way to communicate, to think. But of course, AI doesn't have a value system. I think that's the most important part of the humanity. But as mentioned, I think Chris mentioned before, we wouldn't kill co-worker or fire kill co-worker because we have tools for that purpose. But I think back to the once you have the capacity of intelligence in AI, it's unclear. It's really unclear. I think this is really the beginning of the beginning for something interesting to happen. I think, yeah, this is classical, it's a cliche, right? Currently, we are being over optimistic, but in the long run, we underestimate the potential of new technology, in particular for AI, because AI touches the very nature of human capacity, that is intelligence. So when you talk about the startups, I think at this moment, both the tech giants and they are the same, almost like they are exploring the new possibilities, just like many startups. Yeah, so I think in many ways it's somehow a fair playground for some important areas. But of course, if we're talking about the infrastructures, I think probably Google Cloud or Ali Cloud has lots of huge advantage. But even for that purpose, for example, you see Cohere or other two-chain companies are rising in US, in China, because many industries, just as we discussed before, they want to protect the data privacies. They don't want to send all the data into, say, a public data cloud service provider. And because this need, then there's new companies saying, oh, we can help you to deploy, to train your model on your own site. So this is the need of new companies. So I think new opportunities are rising. I don't see that's the end of entrepreneurships for AI at all.
So
And
let me
also, I'll add one more point. That's number one. Number two is the world is there are so many nations, the European countries, so many industries. Every industry, every country wants to develop their own AI. So I think that is another opportunity for many entrepreneurs. In addition to China and the US, I meant. Well, that's what I meant, yeah.
So let me ask another kind of a related question, related to earlier discussions. We know that Donald Trump is coming to power in the United States, and he's going to deregulate, including AI, obviously, and makes the AI people very happy. But Chris, and do you think that if we want to save Europe, to make the Europe stronger, that we should we deregulate AI more in EU, including data, or not?
No, I
Other
think
people can answer too. Yeah.
I think we should deregulate more than what we have now, because we've been seeing the results, and also we've been seeing the results of the regulation we have. I recall one of the very first meetings of the Lohan Academy, maybe in 2018 or thereabouts. You long were excited about getting the French woman who was key in the development of GDPR.
Yes.
To learn that were applied everywhere. I mean, that it's obviously being a failure, GDPR. In fact, it's annoying most people, including myself sometimes, because you try to access some website or something and say, we value your privacy. Do you accept this much, that much? We might use your data here, there, tick. I mean, you just tick the boxes, yes, so that you get on with your job. That kind of thing, I think it should be done. And companies, and especially companies, are complaining more and more that compliance with the GDPR in fear of big fines is taking up. It's like creating a new regime of red tape and all that. The Brits were saying that they want to leave Europe at Brexit time because of the bureaucracy in Brussels. But in fact, they adopted the entire bureaucracy. They haven't deregulated one single thing about GDPR and other things like that. In that sense, yes, but I wouldn't even go as far as the Americans have gone now, actually, let alone what Trump is threatening to do. You know, there is a better balance. I don't know what that balance is, but somehow it makes me feel uncomfortable to go all the way to the US. But I'm sure Ben will have something to say, because I remember a very lively conversation that we had last time we met in the in the student forum. I can't remember which country we were. That Ben was arguing very strongly in favor of complete deregulation in Europe. Otherwise, Europe is dead. Or am I misinterpreting you, Ben? I do remember that.
Ben?
I've been influenced a lot. In fact, by the conversations we had then. Although I was objecting to everything you were saying, but after the event, I've been thinking about it, and that's how I've come around to thinking that maybe we should have more deregulation.
Well, I think so many now realize in Europe, including, by the way, the Draghi report is pretty explicit that something has to be done about this.
Yeah,
and because
exactly.
Europe, this gets back to my question to Alan. You know, Europe is so dependent on US. I mean, if they start to get sort of dumbed down models, for instance, you know, you saw Apple sending, you know, not its latest and most powerful, you know, update and so on. Europe starts to, I mean, they will change. They will not adopt the European, you know, mode of regulating. They will just adjust to Europe in Europe, not in the rest of the world, and they will just fall behind. I mean, I don't know what on earth are these Europeans thinking, because they are totally dependent on the US, totally, in terms of, the lower layers, the basic layers. I mean, there is Mistral or whatever, but that's a drop in the bucket, relative to, that's my view. And that was the basis for my claim that they are shooting themselves in the foot. And Draghi seems to agree. And I'm glad to hear you seem to agree now. It's not just that it's annoying, it's actually destructive because it kills it makes it very hard to start up things. The startups go to the US. I mean, why would they stay in Europe, which is just full with regulations? And this idea that Brussels effect, that the US and everybody else is forced to follow you. I mean, they are regulating things that they don't have. And that's a first in the world, to regulate things that they don't really have. So I could go on, but I think they are changing their mode, and my interest is the highly scalable stuff is done, in the US. But that's what Alan told us about the next phase in this whole development be such that Europe has a place to sort of jump on the train again. That was basically my question to Alan.
Okay.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Alan, you want to chip in a bit?
Sure. I recall what like many years ago, right? I was fortunate to attend the first or second or maybe first the Lohan Academy's event in Hangzhou, and I met the GDPR, the secretary. I was surprised actually back then such a regulatory system will be implemented. Because that will, I agree. I think deregulation will be helpful. But back to what Ben said, actually, yes, you need a whole AI stack to develop AI, but you don't have to do it all by yourself. But as you mentioned, Mistral is a very good company in Paris, but yes, there are only very few of them, unlike in Silicon Valley, or quite a few in Beijing or in Shanghai or in Shenzhen in China. So I think probably it's not just one company, it's an ecosystem. You need the policy in the government, you need the talents altogether. I think that makes the difference. So it's not just about data privacy. It's important, of course. I agree, deregulation will be extremely helpful for European startups. But that alone, I think, won't change the game because it's the talent, it's the environment, it's the VC support, it's the whole system, and also the application, right? You talk about the data locked into the enterprise or individuals. So how can AI company access the data? Chris mentioned the data should be accessible to the public, and I think many data should be accessible as long as they protect the critical privacy part. And but that's not the case probably in the European countries. But once you have it, you still need engineers, you still need VC, you still need the incubators. It's a whole system. I think that part probably much weaker compared to US or Chinese systems. That's my personal experience. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing about, I should have included China also. I said just US, but I wish that we could draw a lot more on China and there would be more openness, across the borders, rather than sort of insulating ourselves. I mean, so I should have mentioned US and China as Europe being very dependent on them. And I agree with you that you need everything. You need the whole stack. That's the operative word.
Yes, I need a whole system. And also I mentioned during the end of my talk is international collaborations is crucial for the safety, for the development of AI, for both. Otherwise, I think there is a big danger actually lying underneath the growth of AI.
Okay, so I think we are what I have learned. I think we're reaching several conclusions. Seems to be that one of them is that we are prediction machines with value systems, and so that remains the challenge and the danger and the opportunities. Another thing is that it's the game for the big players, but it's also the game for the startups, for the disruptors. The third thing I think we have learned is that despite our concerns for the value for the ethics side of the AI, its potential danger, but actually I think most of us agree that because of this wave of the revolution, technology revolution, that we should really embrace it. Probably deregulation is very important at this point, especially for many countries behind the US. Some of the things we've learned, and I think another point I really love is Ben's comment that what does this mean for learning? Does that make our children, I mean, are they make them stupid or make them smarter? My sense that it will make some people smarter. It will really not good for some other children who are quick for the help. And so anyway, those are profound issues for education for the future. So I think at this point, I'm not sure how much we have achieved today. I think we learned a bunch, but in the meantime, we raised more questions, and I have many questions I would love to ask, but I think we're late. It's almost 12:30 in the morning in China. So probably we should stop here. Ben or Chris, do you have something additional to add? Okay, probably should stop here, and let's come up next time.
Sleep well. Don't think about the AI too much when you go to bed in a minute. Otherwise, you have nightmares.
So,
Yes.
and so finally, I think my colleagues asked me that let's open up that. I think we still have 46 people. Now let's open up our camera. Let's have a group shot.
Family photo, right?
Yes, group photo. Just Chen-Wen, do you want to tell us how to do this?
So everybody, before we leave the event, please turn on your camera and we'll have a group photo. And yes, everyone who is still staying here, please switch on your camera. And I think Professor Yu Bo Chen, I think your camera is a bit blurry. Everyone, please turn on your camera and we have a group photo to commemorate the occasion. All right, great. So I think I just count three and down to three, and then we'll take the photo. 3, 2, 1. All right, great. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And I hope you all enjoyed the occasion. And we also look forward to welcoming you back to our future events. And until next time, take care and goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Long.
Bye.
Yes.
Very good.
See you next time.
See you.